It's go time.
Welcome to the Third Down Gamble podcast with your hosts, Don Charbin and Heath Graham. Ottawa Redblacks' new head coach and general manager Ryan Dinwiddie speaks to his hiring in the nation's capital.
Patience isn't a virtue for me, so the opportunity came about, and I just felt it was the right thing to do, and I wanted to get to work, and there's no reason waiting a few weeks to see what else is out there. I knew this was the place for me, and it's where I wanted to be, so it was a no-brainer, and now we got a head start on the offseason. Thought it was going to be a great opportunity for me and my family, first and foremost, but I was excited to work with the people in this building, and quality people, got to have that in there. And so that was the first box that was checked off for me, but I thought it just felt comfortable for me coming in here. Obviously, this is brand new for me being the general manager, the first day on the job. We're going to work together. Like we said, no egos. We're going to do what's best for the football club, and a lot of trust there.
If there was a news item that I was more surprised at in this last 7 days, and there's a lot to get to, of course, we've got the 2025 Grey Cup going on with the Saskatchewan Roughriders at the Montreal Alouettes. We'll get into why that is stated that way. The story that probably caught everybody off guard in a sense, and maybe because of its alacrity, the fact that Ryan Dinwiddie is now GM and head coach of the Ottawa Redblacks, where 48 hours before he was the head coach of the Toronto Argonauts.
There was some rumor about Ottawa going after him in this capacity. To remind everybody, Ryan Dinwiddie was under contract with the Toronto Argonauts through the 2026 season, which means the Red Blacks had to ask permission to speak with him, and also in order to win him over, it had to be a promotion. Dinwiddie's role as head coach with the Toronto Argonauts had to increase to some degree, and that's exactly what the Red Blacks did, offering him head coach and general manager. I've made my opinions on this very clear. I don't think it is a great idea to have somebody acting as head coach and GM in this league. I believe both are full-time jobs. I wish Ryan Dinwiddie all the best, and I know there's a lot of talent in Ottawa. They need a fresh start. They will tweak their roster, obviously, as well. But the playoff team of 2024 seems to have been the anomaly with the Red Blacks. If you look at the previous 5 seasons of losing football, and I know fans are starting to get frustrated as well. They need a new look. And Ryan Dinwiddie has hit the ground running as head coach in the CFL through his 5 seasons. He's won 2 Grey Cups. He took the team to a franchise record 16-2 regular season as well. He's had a lot of success. And from what we hear, maybe things weren't all rosy with the Argos, and this is a new opportunity for Dinwiddie to start fresh as well.
It's hard to know about the inner workings of the Toronto Argonauts and what the relationships were, but there are times, though, when, and we may talk about this with Winnipeg later, that you get tired of the same people in the room. It's not necessarily that you don't get along, but you might think that we're kind of going the same direction. We're not really changing anything. Maybe we need some fresh ideas, whatever the case may be. Now, maybe there was a ceiling in Toronto, and for Dinwiddie, that was going to be the fact that Michael Clemens was the general manager. He wasn't going anyplace soon. That would mean that Dinwiddie would be sort of stuck in the head coaching position. And the way he presented it at that press conference that we played was that his agent had given him a call and said the Red Blacks are interested. We're getting permission from the Argonauts. The Argonauts were very obliging. Although they didn't want to see this happen, they made a pitch to get him to stay, but it didn't work out. For Toronto, it's a big loss for them because you're right. 3 straight Eastern Finals, 2 Grey Cup wins. What kind of pedigree has he set up in Toronto that whoever comes next has to follow in those footsteps? And for the Argonauts, it's going to leave them in a tough spot for the interim. We'll see what happens from it. But the talk in Ottawa at that press conference, Sean Burke was there, said that I was glad to give up my role as general manager. He's moved up to vice president. He'll still be in the day-to-day operations, but he's going to be much more collaborative as opposed to a person that's going to say, this is where we're going to go. This is what we're going to do.
I'm thinking back to Ryan Dinwiddie's first season as a head coach as well. And I remember on this podcast, we were critical of some of the decisions he made, and certainly some clock management decisions that cost the Argonauts games early on in his tenure. But he has since then won a Coach of the Year award as well. This is a guy that, though never really developed as a CFL player, he had a very short stint as a quarterback in the CFL. He obviously learned the game, learned the ins and outs of the teams and the rosters as well. And I do think that he will provide that spark for the Red Blacks. Sean Burke staying on is huge, though, as well. Yes, his role and his title are changing. That may take some of that pressure off of Ryan Dinwiddie as that head coach GM position, having somebody of Burke's caliber and knowledge in that mentorship role.
It's very clear from Burke that Dinwiddie is going to have all say over the final game day roster and the roster makeup as it goes forward. But you do get the sense, though, that these two are going to be very collaborative, that the two are going to be talking about where they see this team going. They seem to really rejoice in the fact that they're kind of on the same page already, which is kind of nice if you've got similar ideas and similar passions, that you can find common ground right off the top. For Dinwiddie, though, it's seeing this as an opportunity for his family, as he mentions, but also getting on the ground and running right now. Like, there is no delay. This happened within about 72 hours. The Red Blacks got the deal done. Red Blacks president Mike Sciarra had basically went out of his way to make sure this was a seamless process. Thank the Argonauts for their understanding of the situation.
You mentioned the final say on the roster, and interesting comments from Ryan Dinwiddie saying that he was comfortable with Drew Brown as the quarterback of the Red Blacks. Comfortable and confident are two very different terms, so it'll be interesting to see what the path forward is in that quarterback position with the Red Blacks. It wasn't a huge vote of confidence. It wasn't he has a future in this league, like the Edmonton Elks said about Trey Ford, but it'll be something to watch moving forward.
In that press conference, though, I heard a different tone coming from Dinwiddie, and that was, if Drew Brown is healthy, then his upside is far greater. And what he saw in that situation was that Drew Brown needs more protection. Now, he questioned some of the coaching that went on, not in a negative way, but just in a what-if way, and whether or not that the coaching staff in Ottawa had sort of taken Drew Brown aside to learn defenses. And then that way, when you're standing opposite from them, can you recognize what's going on? I think he's got a lot of faith in Drew Brown, but he needs him to be on the field. He's been through it enough with Chad Kelly in Toronto, where he's had a quarterback basically not play for 2 seasons. He doesn't want to go through that anymore. He wants a quarterback that he can trust, rely upon, and have available to him every weekend. This brings us to the next question, and that is the Toronto Argonauts. And here we go. The Mike O'Shea sweepstakes are underway. Let's get this very clear. Mike O'Shea is under contract with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. However, they've already given permission for the Toronto Argonauts to talk to O'Shea. There's something that I thought was going to happen regardless. O'Shea's contract technically ends December 31st of this year. Means he's not under any obligation to be with the Bombers as of January 1st. Wade Miller, recognizing this, said, okay, if it's an opportunity for you, then let's go for it. And one of the things that is being tossed about is maybe there's an assistant general managership in O'Shea's docket when the Argonauts hand over the paperwork to him.
As the Bombers season came to a close, there was questions to Mike O'Shea regarding his contract situation. At that time, he did say that he was confident or optimistic that talks would resume with the Bombers shortly. We're not ruling him out of re-signing with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers by any means at this point. I'm sure the Bombers are going to make a pitch to retain his services as well. He's been in Winnipeg now 12 years. He's established some roots there with his family. He is a born and raised Southern Ontario guy. He played for Hamilton and Toronto in this league as well. So obviously he's had success with the Argonauts as a player. as a special teams coach as well. And this is perhaps an opportunity to return home and take the helm of the Argonauts. Toronto is going to make a pitch to Mike O'Shea. The ball is really in his court. It's, does he want to continue with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers with what he, Wade Miller, Kyle Walters have established in Winnipeg over this last decade, or does he want the fresh start? And you talked about the room and the message, and Winnipeg took a big step back this year. They really reached peak, I would say, in 2021 when they won that second consecutive Grey Cup. Have taken little steps back. This one was a much larger step back to be all the way down to that crossover team. They still finished 10-8, which most years doesn't equal a crossover. It's a third place or perhaps even a second place finish. That performance-wise in the standings, okay. The performance on the field, however, wasn't there, and I'm sure he's aware of that, and it's whether he still feels he's the right guy to drive that ship in Winnipeg. And you see it in all sports where successful coaches eventually lose the room. And I think, keeping in Winnipeg, Paul Maurice stepped away from the Winnipeg Jets 3.5 years ago. He got a fresh start in Florida, has led them to back-to-back Stanley Cups. The Jets, with a fresh look, won the President's Trophy as the top team in the regular season last year. Sometimes all the talent in the world doesn't quite gel. You get somebody fresh with a new idea and things take off.
O'Shea was drafted in 1993 by Edmonton, and his rights were traded to Hamilton on draft day. The career of Mike O'Shea, though, starts with the Tiger Cats. He has a year with the Lions. And then, for the most part, from 96 to 2008, he's with the Argonauts. Becomes their special teams coordinator in 2010. Signs with the Bombers in 2013. North Bay, Ontario native. He has a lot of family there. And yes, he did say he was optimistic, but when Ed Tate asked him further, what do you mean by optimistic? He said, I'm optimistic I'll have a contract. And Tate pressed, here or where, putting off Ed Tate and saying, don't worry about it. But in the same breath, I wondered if O'Shea was confident enough in his own acumen, like his own pedigree, that he would say, yeah, if it ain't here, I'll be somewhere. Don't worry about it.
That's a very true comment, and I don't know if there's going to be any other head coach positions coming up this year other than the Toronto Argonauts. You would have to think everybody else seems pretty settled into who their head coach is and not likely to make any big moves. So the list of candidates is lengthy. 3 Down Nation put together a list of 14 potential head coaches of the Toronto Argonauts. You have to think if Mike O'Shea is the successful one, a lot of that remaining 13 would be considered serious contenders for Winnipeg, a couple of them already with ties to that organization.
Well, Jarius Jackson would be an obvious because he's had time coaching in Edmonton, so he's got a little taste of it. And, of course, he is there in Winnipeg. Now, does he know everything that he needs to know about the team? That's another question. Mike Miller is another person that you could think about. But if you're Toronto and you don't get O'Shea, I would think that they'll lean towards maybe trying to pull Orlando Steinhauer out of Hamilton. That's a possibility. I don't know from this list who else they would really be that interested in. Mark Mueller, inexperienced. Brent Monson, sort of the same thing. Mickey Donovan on the team. Pete Costanza on the team. Maybe you bring up one of those two. Donovan, I know, is well liked. Kevin Iben, another one on the team. Maybe as a head coach, he might be well suited, but his defense this year wasn't the greatest. Him and Jason Shivers, the Argonauts on defense struggled. You could argue that Edmonton's free agent run certainly had a lot to do with that. I don't know. Byron Archambault, he's going to be tossed around for a little while because he is a good person with everybody. Maybe that's what the Argonauts need, but I think they're going to take the entire bank up to Mike O'Shea's door and say, pick what you need from these accounts and we'll give you whatever title you want, up to, but not including general manager, unless Michael Clemens says, I'll be moving aside.
Noel Thorpe is another name that jumps out that has been an assistant coach in this league for over 20 years. We know he's been close to head coaching positions in the past. He's been a short-listed candidate for several jobs. Is this his chance? And if not with Toronto, Like we said, if O'Shea goes there, does he get that chance in Winnipeg? Or do they promote from within? Mike Miller, Jordan Younger, Jarius Jackson, all three are prime candidates to move up into that head coaching job. One other name not on this list that you mentioned a couple of weeks ago, Chris Jones. Does he make his triumphant return to the CFL, and is that with the Argos? There are some names out there. We'll see what happens.
That's Chris Jones is a possibility. And again, ties with the Argonauts. He spent a lot of time with Toronto as a defensive coordinator there about 15 years ago. Him and O'Shea actually were contemporaries for a little while. I think that O'Shea is probably the lead in all of this. And it's kind of, if that door closes, then the wheels really start spinning, and we'll see who comes out of that. But anyone and everyone is available after the fact. And unless the Argonauts come away with the O'Shea sweepstakes not having the winning card, then I don't believe we'll have to worry too much about anybody else. In Winnipeg, if that happens, the vacuum starts. Do you promote from within? Do you come from without? Blue Bombers traditionally, with head coaches, they like to find somebody that hasn't been with the organization and bring them over.
Kudos to the Red Blacks for getting their guy as quickly as they did. They've started everything in motion now, but they were the front runners. They went after the person that they wanted, and they gave him the package that he was happy to take. What the Argonauts offer O'Shea is going to have to be quite appealing to him to pry him away from Winnipeg at this point. But the Bombers also could be looking at where they've been over these last 4 seasons now, and the failure to get over the finish line. Maybe they're not as tied to O'Shea as I believe they are.
It's always that question. When do you make a change? We talked about it last week in the podcast. When do you make a change? And you're always hamstrung by this whole notion of, do we do it too soon? Do we do it too late? This is the great predicament that every organization goes through. Or do you need to make a change at all? Whether Wade Miller thinks it's time, that's something that he's not saying to anybody, but he is a very strong-willed person. And if he thinks that change is needed, he'll probably make that happen. And Blue Bomber faithful will have to sort of get used to the idea that maybe this era is coming to a close and they have to start on a new one.
Ryan Dinwiddie getting the promotion to head coach general manager has opened up a lot of these questions to several coaches across the league, not the least of which is Scott Milanovic. He was asked about this as well. Did say he is open to a GM job in the future, but right now is focused as the head coach of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. We saw Orlando Steinauer have that position as well and was not able to end the Grey Cup drought. Is Milanovic right in saying maybe someday, but not right now?
I think he is, and it really comes down to what you want to do. And Milanovic, I don't believe, wants the dual role. Once he moves into GM, if he gets that opportunity and becomes a general manager, then he'll be quite content. And a lot of coaches, it was asked at the press conference for the Grey Cup, both coaches from the Rough Riders and the Montreal Alouettes. You had Corey Mace asked point blank 2 years in, are you thinking about it? And he's like, are you kidding me? And, I've just started to learn what I'm doing here as a head coach. Let's give me a chance here to flesh this out before anything else happens. And Jason Moss said, yeah, it's in the back of your mind, but I'm too busy coaching right now. There's no way I'm thinking about this. And yeah, it's around. Both of them admitted it because they're seeing what's happening. They're seeing the dual role being picked up. You are not a proponent of it. I also oppose it. But the way Dinwiddie was talking about it with his time in Toronto was that he had his hands on a lot of that. So for him, he doesn't see it as a major change in his life. He said that Michael Clemens told him it's find that balance and you'll be all right.
Keeping with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, Bo Levi Mitchell's future is unclear after the East final loss. Scott Milanovic says he wants Bo Levi Mitchell back. It's whether or not Mitchell wants to play another season He's coming off of back-to-back 5,000 plus passing yard seasons, though. Pretty tough to walk away when you're having that kind of success. But again, failed to get the Ticats back into the Grey Cup, and they have to be disappointed with how the season ended up.
I think there's a lot of disappointment in what Bo Levi Mitchell is saying. He says, I have to have conversations with my family and my coaches and the guys that make these decisions and then figure out what I want to do. He's hurting at this moment. It's the worst time to be asking this of someone unless they've already predisposed themselves to the answer that, yes, I am actually not playing anymore, that this was my last game. I don't think that we're going to see the last of Bo Levi Mitchell. He still has a lot in the tank, but I think just you consider the last time he played a playoff game for the Tiger Cats where he was benched and only played the last 6.25 minutes. Here, he's the quarterback of record, went all the way, played a relatively good game, but loses. And he's looking at this and going, ugh, I don't like this feeling. But he has to step away before he makes a really strong decision one way or the other. You need that time away with your family to just wind down.
The only way I see a quarterback announcing retirement so quickly after a season ends is if they're walking away with the Grey Cup in their hand. And that's something that I've thought a lot about with Zach Collaros. We know the Grey Cup was in Winnipeg this year. Had he pushed the Bombers through to a home Grey Cup victory, I would not have been surprised at all to see him walk away. Likewise with Bo, I think if he pushed the Hamilton Ticats to the top of that mountain this year, ended that 25-year drought with a Grey Cup victory, he's got a future in football broadcasting. He's a natural at it already. He's pitched in over the last couple of Grey Cups. I don't see him necessarily needing to stick around much beyond that. It would be a great time to walk away. And now we come to the Saskatchewan Roughriders and Trevor Harris, another quarterback well into his late 30s, an opportunity here, a big chance to win a Grey Cup. And as much as they talk about him being with the Riders for years to come, you have to think he's got it in the back of his mind if they walk away with the victory on Sunday.
You got to believe it that Trevor Harris would probably call it quits. He's 39 now. He had a brutal knee injury a couple of seasons ago. He's taken a beating as a quarterback, especially in the last 5 years of his career. He sort of reminds me of Travis Lulay, who in the first 5 years of his career was on the field every night. And in the last 5 years, just never seemed to be there because of freak accident after hellacious hit, after whatever happened. And he even mused about how different his career had been since he started getting injured. And I wonder if Trevor Harris, who has certainly had a great career in the CFL, would he be thinking on those terms? I would imagine so. Very few people get an opportunity to play for as long as Harris has played and walk away with a ring on it.
Exactly my thought. And as I said, there's been talk from Corey Mace, from Jeremy O'Day, from Trevor Harris himself about seeing the future with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. But I think that's a pretty good chance to reflect on a great career and walk away on top. I think of John Elway in the NFL. He did that with the Denver Broncos, walked away a winner after a long career chasing the championships, ended up winning back-to-back, and that was enough for him to say, hey, I'm good. See you later.
And that's the hardest thing, I think, for a player to ever understand. It's more often than not the game leaves you before you leave it. You think of Bo Levi Mitchell right now, he wanted to walk away with a ring on it. He hasn't done it. Now, does he go through all that grind again to get one more shot at it in 2026? And he has to decide. His body's taken a few poundings. He certainly was healthy this year, which is very fortuitous. He's one of a couple of quarterbacks that made it through the season, relatively speaking. Ultimately, football's a tough game. It's really hard on your body, and you have to start thinking about it. Now, what does Harris do in the post? That's a different question. He had mused about maybe going on TSN. Depends if TSN wants him, and Bo Levi Mitchell probably already has a chair there, so they'd have to make room.
In any professional sport, there's only one team at the end of the year that's truly happy, and that's the one that wins that final game. as players, they chase it. They're competitive. They are some of the most competitive people in the world. And I understand absolutely chasing that high. But if you attain it at the age where you're in the twilight of your career, how much motivation do you have to run it back again?
That's a great point. I don't know what to say to it. One other thing that was talked about at the coaches' press conference just prior to Grey Cup was the operations cap. Stuart Johnson is pushing for a review of everything from top to bottom. How do we do it? And is there a better way? And when asked of the coaches what to do about the operations cap, they both spouted almost in unison, get rid of it.
I completely understand that opinion from those coaches as well. It's becoming more apparent that this cap is a hindrance to some teams and player development. Love him or hate him, Luke Wilson has talked about it this season as well, with his experience in the NFL, how much time they spend in the team facility and the specialized coaches that they have. The CFL, you do not have that same roster of coaches to really help you. Yes, there are specialized coaches with an offensive line coach and a defensive line coach, etc., but not to the same degree that they have in the NFL. And because you are hard capped on the salaries that you can pay to your coaching staff, you have to be very careful of how you choose to spend that money. And it does come at the detriment to player development.
The cap isn't just money, though. I think the cap in money terms is $2.8 million. Real substantive, I think, what they're getting to problem is that the cap is also 11 coaches and 14 other operations staff. So let's say you bump that up by 4 each to 15 coaches and 18 operations staff. What if you did that, move the salary side of up by another 500,000? I think the league could probably stomach that. And if they're really looking at being innovative and looking at trying to improve, then this is one of the things you've got to do is open up that operations cap. It's not like the CFL has fallen backwards because of it, but it's made it a lot tougher on the guys that are left and the women that are left behind to pick up a bigger role because of the lack of help that you have.
What the operations cap also does is create turmoil when you're wanting to get rid of coaches. If they are under contract, it creates a whole lot of headaches. And we saw that with Chris Jones and the Edmonton Elks. The performance on the field wasn't there. And there was a lot of talk about how long of a contract he had, what his firing would do to that operations cap as well. The best case scenario, you let a coach go, they get picked up by another team, and you're kind of off the hook. If you've signed a coach to a 3-year contract, things aren't working out after one, you're kind of handcuffed on what to do because it's going to affect what you're able to pay the next guy should you choose to get rid of him.
Well, you do get one mulligan, but you can't have too many of them. And you can't have concurrent mulligans. That's where I think that they get so upset, is because if you do want to get rid of somebody, then that necessarily does not have to count against their operations cap, but you can't do it twice in 2 years. I think it's also slowed down, though, the turnover in coaching, because you don't want to necessarily hire and fire so quickly because you do have this other concern that you have. And maybe I'm not going to pick on Bob Dice, but just let's use him as an example. Maybe partway through the season, maybe before the season, they didn't see enough and they wanted to get rid of him. Well, you're carrying a big salary. You may as well employ the person, let them go after it, see what happens. You're kind of between a rock and a hard place sometimes.
That was exactly the situation with the Red Blacks. Once it became evident that they were not going to make the playoffs, the writing was on the wall, and it was just a matter of running out the remainder of the season. As we saw, it was hours after the end of their season that they announced that Bob Dice wasn't coming back. They took very little time in getting their next guy. You know, those wheels were in place. They were making moves and having discussions of what was next long before that final whistle blew on the Red Black season.
Hi, I'm Dave Naylor, and you're listening to the Third Down Gamble podcast.
BC Lions general manager Ryan Rigmaiden questions the validity of the winning touchdown in the Western Final.
I just saw it about 30 minutes ago. I mean, it's obvious it's not a catch. I think that's all I should probably say about that. Yeah.
How frustrating is that?
Terribly frustrating. I mean, you've got guys that are fighting the whole season to lose a game on something that may have not been a catch. And so, listen, hats off to Sask, their staff, their players. They've had a tremendous year. But nobody wants to lose a game that way. You don't want to lose a game, period, but especially that way. And so I just saw the photo of it. I'm just trying to digest it as well. But to me, it did not look like a catch.
The British Columbia Lions do not believe that that was a catch. Tommy Nield, who caught the ball with 11 seconds left across the goal line in the game in Regina that won the West for Saskatchewan and gave them that chance to get to the Grey Cup. The Lions on the field at the time were unsure. But ever since, Omar Damon, their owner, has posted that photo where, to his way of thinking, I'll put it that way, he sees the football on the ground. The problem is you can't tell what that object is. Is it, because it's so hidden in shadow, could it be an arm? Could it be an elbow? Could it be what? Replays, they went over them time and time again. If you remember watching the football game, there was 2 minutes and 15 seconds between the announcement of the review and the final pronouncement of the review. They looked at it every which way and could not see anything conclusive that said that wasn't a catch. What do you think of the BC Lion response being echoed by Ryan Rigmaiden?
First off, the replay center and the officials on the field did their job with this one. The original signal was a touchdown. They looked at it from every angle. I believe it was very close. From what we've seen, it sure looks like Tommy Nield managed to get his arm underneath that ball. We don't have as many angles as the NFL does. It's not quite there, but there were a lot of looks at it. I believe the right call was made. You also have to consider it was a first and goal play. Even had it been ruled incomplete, there's 11 seconds left on the clock. The Riders are going to get 2 more cracks at it. The outcome of the game wasn't completely decided on that single play. There would have been other opportunities to do something. Perhaps an upright comes into play. We don't know what the future holds on a second down and or third down play. For Amar Doman to post on his social media about it, I'm going to defend him a little bit and say he's a passionate owner. He's very involved. He wants the league to succeed. He wants his team to succeed. That being said, to criticize the officiating crew to say that they got it wrong without definitive proof at this point. And BC Lions, for all their credit, they had a lot of success this year. Came down to a last play of a very, very close game, and it didn't go their way. But I'm kind of with Rider Nation here a little bit and telling them to get over it. The play was called a touchdown. Riders win the game.
When you look at the pixelated picture that you see that was posted by Omar Damon on Instagram, you certainly see an object below the hands of Tommy Nield. The problem that I have is we don't know what that object is. Is it the defender from the BC Lions? Is that his elbow, or is it the football? And from 3 Down Nations, if you go to 3 Down Nations, the story is get over it. The Riders tell BC Lions to move on after Amar Damon created Tommy Nield catch controversy. That's the storyline. Go to 3downnation.com and check it out yourself. There looks like a pixelated football up in the air above it. And it's a tough call. And one of the things, love it or not, one of the best looks at it is obscured by the base of the upright. In another case, it's a BC defender that gets in the way. In another case, it's a Rough Rider player that gets in the way. It seemed as though at the moment of crisis, there was always something in the way, and you have to go with what you know, and that is he had the ball up to that point. You cannot surmise and saying, well, he must have dropped it, because you have no evidence to tell you that he did or didn't.
This will further push Commissioner Johnson's case to move the uprights to the back of the end zone. If anything comes out of this, that is clear. The goalposts interfered with some of the camera angles, which would have been a little bit more decisive.
Maybe.
Possibly. You're right. It looks from the pixelated photos that I've seen, I believe that is Nield's arm or the defender's arm that was being circled by Amar Doman, not the football. Again, very close play. And I'm not saying it was the perfectly clean, immaculate catch, but I think enough was there to say that he had control of that football. And even with contact with the ground, it looks like he was under it enough to maintain that control.
They took their time. They looked at it from, I think, about 7 different angles, trying to sort out what they'd seen. And the best ones that I saw, and I believe you agree, is that the hand was underneath the football and the other hand was on top of it. It was never a case where that ball was rolling on the ground. He'd always had a measure of control over that football. And if it ever touched the ground, he still had control. That's what they're looking for. Did anything change? I doubt it. And most likely they've got it right. But we may see some forensically high-res photograph at some point later that shows the ball conclusively was down on the ground. But until that day comes, we have to go with what we've got. And to give Rick Maiden credit, he did say the Riders played well and he wishes them well. It's not like it's sour grapes right through and through.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, it was a very competitive and close game. It came down to a final, inside the final minute, clutch time. On a first down, even if it's called incomplete, I believe the Riders still punch it in, taking more time off the clock and giving the BC Lions even less of an opportunity to come back to either tie or take the lead.
Lions kind of did the Rough Riders a favor, although the Lions needed to do this, but they called the timeout with 14 seconds left. Saskatchewan, given what the situation was, then could have actually had a running play on first down. They didn't have to necessarily throw it. They chose to. They could have used A.J. Ouellette on the very first play and caught BC off guard and scored that way. There was 11 seconds left after this play. They had 2 more plays in the book to use. They had time. Plays would have been available to them. I kind of agree with you, though, that if they Lions stuff them on that play, Saskatchewan scores on one of the next 2, or maybe they don't score on the next 1 or 2, and then the Lions have nothing left for time. The kickoff will run out the game.
Not the first time that we've seen a last-second close play in Mosaic Stadium involving the Rough Riders in a West Final. This one went their way, and they are Grey Cup bound.
In the Eastern Conference, the Montreal Alouettes win on a last-play field goal over the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And there's been a lot of speculation about Davis Alexander and how healthy he is. And basically, he grabbed his hamstring after a tackle by Hamilton linebacker Devin Varasek. You know it, and I know it. That hamstring is still bothering him. He gutted it out, though. He came back out and led the Alouettes to the game-winning score. Now, there's a lot of talk about whether he's going to be the starting quarterback in the Grey Cup and all that sort of stuff. But I got to give him credit, considering that leg had to be hurting. He still went out there and led that team to the win.
He did. It was a diminished Davis Alexander compared to what we saw earlier on in the game. Obviously hobbled by that hamstring, and we saw it early on this season. I was at the game in Edmonton when he first injured the hamstring this year. He came back, injured it again. This is strike 3 on that leg at this point, but you know he's going to do everything he can to perform in this Grey Cup game. Fortunately, the weather looks reasonable for Winnipeg for mid-November. It's not going to be minus 22 or something like that, which could really put him at risk. He's talked about having multiple rehab sessions per day this week leading up to the Grey Cup to do everything he can to be game ready. That's going to be the biggest difference maker in this game, in my opinion, is the health of Davis Alexander. If he's got full mobility, look out. But if he doesn't, it could be a long day for him and that Alouettes offense against the Riders D.
And in a defensive-oriented game that this was in Hamilton, one sequence by Jordan Murray really sticks out where he took a rough play and an objectionable conduct by throwing his helmet. That put 25 yards of penalties on a team that was inside the 20-yard line and pushed them all the way back out close to midfield. In a game like that, you've got to maintain your composure. Now, Murray's a veteran. He's been around. He's been stalwart player, but at this time, he certainly did not do his team any favors.
The Ticats did manage to get back into field goal range and get 3 points out of that series. But you're right, they were in that red zone. A touchdown was on the board to back up 25 yards because of the one player. It looked to me like the rough play penalty was warranted already. And then for him to react the way he did, throwing his helmet off, was selfish and unprofessional to do at that point, at any point of a game, but especially with your team driving the field and getting into scoring range in what is a very close game and an impactful game. It's the Grey Cup appearance is on the line. You can't back your team up 25 yards.
And for the Tiger Cats, late in the game, they have a 3rd and 2 with about a minute 50 to go, and they decide to going for the field goal with opposed to go for it. And that basically sets up the Alouettes to come down the field and get the game-winning field goal. And we saw it in the Rough Riders versus Lions game where Saskatchewan in that third quarter on a 3rd and about 2.5 to go to goal went after it and got the touchdown. Now, some people said Corey Mace took a big gamble by going for the field goal with 2:42 to go in the fourth quarter. But I felt okay with it because if you do the math, they were going to get at least one more possession. And even if the Lions went down and kicked a field goal, you were still in the football game. It changed the thought pattern too, because you go away from the Rough Riders playing for the tie if they score a touchdown. Now they're playing for the win, and that gets BC far more uptight. Now, as it turned out, the Riders had 2 more possessions. They had to punt the ball away 3rd and 10 from their own 36, and then BC did them a favor and doesn't get a first down on either one. And Nathan Rourke made as much as I didn't like the second down timeout call from Corey Mace, and I hate those because if BC gets a first down, you've got no timeouts and away BC goes. But BC did him a favor, and Nathan Rourke threw the ball out of bounds. That's a rookie mistake. You don't do that in the final minutes.
I don't agree with you on Corey Mace's attempted field goal call. They made the field goal. It worked out for them, but I don't think that was the right way to approach it. It still leaves them needing a touchdown. You're 100% right. The touchdown is now to win as opposed to tie. It changes that dynamic of the scoring. And this will be a call that will be dissected for years to come. It did work out. I'm not going to say it didn't. The Riders won the game. That was the end goal. Kicking that field goal gave the BC Lions opportunities to run out the clock. The Lions failed to do so. The result of that is they gave the ball back twice to the Saskatchewan Roughriders and allowed them to score. You're already in that scoring range. I think they had to go for it. I think they should have gone for it. Now, again, the outcome of the game dictates that the call was made and the end result was successful. I just don't think that was the right spot for it.
I have no problem with it, as I stated before. Follow my thinking on this. You go for on 3rd and 3. Just because you've done it before, everyone thinks, well, you can do it again. Okay, Mace takes the points. But if you do go for it and you don't make it, you're down 7. The Lions get the ball. Maybe they don't get another first down, but they punt it away. But you're still playing for the tie when you get the football. When they get that 3 points, they kick off. The Lions now are still ahead, but they're still going to be playing conservatively. But the next time you get the football, you're going to be playing for the win. And I don't mind not having to go to overtime in a game where it's about -10 as this game is winding down. Not bitterly cold, but cold enough that the Riders didn't need to be out there any longer than they wanted to. And this was a way to do it. If it didn't work out, everyone's going to vilify them. But I have no problem with the call. You left enough time on the clock to do something about it, and they did.
Nathan Rourke is still looking for that first Grey Cup appearance. 290 yards, 20 for 30, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. I feel like we still have not seen the best of Nathan Rourke in a playoff game in his CFL career. Trevor Harris on the other side, 305 yards and 2 touchdowns, had a great game and really kept the Riders in it. And of course, that last-minute touchdown to Tommy Nield is going to be part of Rough Riders lore for many years to come.
I don't put this on Nathan Rourke. There are two things that I think really hampered the BC Lions. Number one, at the start of the game, the Lions receivers were not catching the football. They dropped a lot of balls. Number two, Rourke was under siege. And how many times did he make a spectacular play where there's a wall of humanity around him and all of a sudden he pops out, or he's being tackled and he throws it across body to a receiver 7 yards down the field? When your quarterback is having to do that again and again and again, that means your offensive line is being dominated. BC has to rectify that going into the offseason. This was their biggest liability. The Stampeders almost made them pay for it. The Rough Riders did. Nathan Rourke had a great game. He was pumped. He was fired up. He's 0-2 in Western Finals. That'll change soon enough. He's definitely a passionate soul, but I don't put this game on him, and I don't necessarily put the game on their defense. I really think that BC dominated the football game. The Rough Riders won. Even that interception that I mentioned, Nathan Rourke threw, it was a tipped play. Keon Hatcher should have caught the ball, and it was tipped by a Rough Rider to another Rough Rider, ended up in the interception. The one thing I will say, Nathan Rourke is one of the toughest guys to bring down in the CFL. His escapability is incredible. The Riders did a really good job, and this was something I talked about last week, of keeping him from doing a lot of damage with his legs. His rushing stats are 4 attempts for 6 yards. Granted, those were some short yardage situations for touchdowns, but he didn't have that 30 or 40 yard run or the 70 yard run we saw him bust off earlier this season as well. That linebacking core and defensive line of the Riders kept him where they needed to be successful. It's interesting. You had a sequence of turnovers where AJ Ouellette fumbles the football. The Lions get a short porch, go down the field, and that Hatcher fumble was eerily similar to the one that he had the last time that the BC Lions were there. The same spot in the field, the same motion. This time, though, it was a deflected ball, bounced off a player on the ground, and the Rough Riders catch it and actually wind up going down the field and getting a field goal, so points off turnovers. Nathan Rourke, you said it last week, and I thought it was right on. He is the face of this league. It's his league to dominate from this point forward. There's been some chatter about how it was BC's time and that the Lions were ready to take the mantle. And Trevor Harris fought back and said, not just yet, maybe down the road, but not here, not now. That's great. That's great for the league. That you get some really powerful quarterbacks going after each other just a little bit. Nathan Rourke, though, I agree with you. He is special. We're just lucky right now to see what he can do. Interesting to see how his actions and words are received compared to Davis Alexander. There's been some criticism on Alexander for the way he's carried himself. Both of these guys are young, passionate, and very talented quarterbacks. It would be great to see these two leading teams into the playoffs and into Grey Cups for the next decade, and whoever else might come along, whether it's Curtis Rourke, whether it's Taylor Elgersma, Taylor Powell, the list goes on, some of these younger guys up and coming. I love it. I love the attitude. You have to be the most confident guy in the room when you're the quarterback of a football team. It's the most important position on the field. You need to be a leader. You need to inspire. And whether you do that with your actions, your words, or both, it's fantastic to see. And you look at Cody Fajardo with the Alouettes when they upset the Blue Bombers in that Grey Cup game. Very vocal in the dressing room at halftime, something a little bit uncharacteristic for Cody Fajardo, but he seized the moment, and you have to love that spirit. Well, you look at the play that basically set up the game-winning touchdown. It's a 3rd and 5, and they don't try something short. They go to Cole Speaker down the left sideline. A gutsy call that comes right from the coach, right to the quarterback, right to the receiver. And you don't think the Alouettes were sky high after that moment, thinking, hey, we've got this? And the Bombers kind of panicked and went cover 1. Talked about that enough. You need these types of moments to really build your character. Nathan Rourke, he's going to recover from this. They have to improve that offensive line. He needs to be on his feet. He shouldn't have to run 40, 50, 60, 100 yards a night. Maybe just as an explosion play, yes, but not beyond that. And I think that's where the Lions have struggled mightily. Now, think about the Lions free agent list coming up. James Butler is available. Aiden Eberhardt, Keon Hatcher, 2 huge players in their receiving core, and almost that entirety of their offensive line is available.
Changes on the way for BC for sure, but as long as they've got Rourke and can protect him, I think they will be a successful team.
And others on the defense, you got Nathan Cherry, who's a U of S Husky grad. Maybe he comes home. Adam O'Clair. You've got Ben Halatic, Adam Konar, Sione Tehema, as well, Jonah Tavai. Lots of moving parts. And now Rick Maiden said priority one is going to be re-signing Keon Hatcher. I kind of think priority two is going to have to be re-signing Aiden Aberhart as well. They need that. Now, James Butler, who gutted it out with a sore ankle and played the entirety of that football game in Regina, what do they do about him?
Running backs, especially American running backs, are a bit interchangeable in this league, and we've seen pretty quick fall off from players. Kadeem Carey rings to mind, William Stanback, two guys that 3 years ago were a couple of the top backs in the league, have certainly fallen down that ladder. James Butler had some dynamic games and he had some so-so games this year. It'll be interesting to see if he's their future. They like what they saw from Horvath. He had a couple of big games as well. A different breed of running back from Butler for sure, but maybe that's a direction that they want to go. A big guy that can help aid in that pass protection for Rourke.
And the other team that has claws, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, Jake Dolagala, Bo Levi Mitchell is a free agent. Terry Ayler-Powell is a free agent. So your quarterback troop is available to anyone who can bid. Now, I don't think that if Bo returns, it'll be anywhere but Hamilton. Greg Bell is a free agent, but Jordan Murray is available. Brandon Revenberg is available. Jacob Schott is available. Coulter Woodmansey is available on that offensive line. And then you got Julian Hauser, who's the top defensive player nominee from the Tiger Cats. Defensive backs, Deshaun Amos. You got Stavros Katsantonis, who I don't think is going anywhere. Jamal Peters, Destin Talbert. A lot of great players that you have to look at the cap and you have to figure out where can we spend our money. And this is where teams are really up against it sometimes when they have some success.
One name to watch for the Hamilton Tiger Cats is receiver Tim White. They invested a lot in Kenny Lawler. They've got Keandre Smith under contract right now as well. Tim White has been a workhorse for the Hamilton Tiger Cats for the last several years. His hands get him into trouble from time to time, though, and is he worth what he's likely to be asking for the Ticats if they've got Smith and Lawler under contract and bring in a couple of other pieces?
That's a great question. I don't know where the Ticats go with drops last year, especially in this season. He definitely hung on to the ball a lot better, but then he had a fumble in overtime that cost them a football game against the BC Lions.
Third down.
The Saskatchewan Roughriders will be wearing their road whites in the 112th Grey Cup. The Montreal Alouettes will be wearing their home blues. And you ask, why is it that the Eastern team is the home team? Well, the CFL has reinstituted a policy where the home team is going to alternate years. This was done forever until a few years ago when they said, no, whatever division hosts, that's the home team. And with a run of games in the West for the Grey Cup, starting with Vancouver, going to Winnipeg, then to Calgary, then to Regina, it wouldn't be fair to Eastern clubs to never be the home team in that stretch. They may have powerful teams, but never get the home locker room. So the Alouettes are going to get the Blue Bombers locker room as well.
Interesting wrinkle to it, and I understand why they do this. You're 100% right. With such a run of 4 consecutive Grey Cup games in the West right now, you have to make it fair for the teams to alternate home and away. Just so happens this year, going into Winnipeg, the Riders do not get to be the home team. They are going to use the U of M Bison's locker room, which is a better facility than the regular visiting team would get. So the facilities are going to be about equal for these two teams, just that the Alouettes get that advantage that comes with being the home team.
We've already talked about Davis Alexander for the Alouettes. He's going to be starting. As much as this was asked of Jason Moss, what's going to happen? How is his hamstring? he deflected all the questions and said he's going to be the starter in this football game, which begs of the question if you're the Saskatchewan Roughriders, is Alexander going to be as mobile? Do you set up your defense for that, or do you set up a defense where you think that McLeod Bethel Thompson is going to be playing?
With McLeod Bethel Thompson as the backup, his best game of the season was actually in Regina against the Saskatchewan Roughriders. He put on a performance that night. He didn't have a lot of success against other teams. This, to me, and as we speak right now, the Riders are sitting at about a 3.5 point favorite in this game. I think that's a legitimate line, but really dependent on the health of Davis Alexander. If he's even at 85% mobility with that leg, I like the Alouettes' chances. If he's hobbled a bit more than that, that Rough Riders defense, as we saw, they kept Nathan Rourke contained in that game against the Lions in the Western Final, and I think they could do that again against a slower moving Davis Alexander.
The Alouettes, if Alexander is not chucking the football, I do think they take a hit, but I don't know how far of a hit. And it was Carful Exame that was picked on mercilessly by McLeod Bethel Thompson, Tyson Philpott in that football game where Philpott went off for 200 plus yards and a couple of touchdowns, and Exame had the best seat in the house seeing what was happening. I felt sorry for Exame because they really tortured him. That's not going to be the case this time. The starters are out there for the Rough Riders. But Montreal, we talk a lot about the veteran presence of Trevor Harris. How does that Montreal defense approach him? We know that Darnell Sankey and Tyrese Beverett, they seem to be all over the place in Montreal's alignments. How many more disguises are they going to throw at the Rough Riders to try to get Harris off his game?
That defense for Montreal is going to be the difference maker in this game. I think it'll be a low-scoring affair. I don't think we're going to see a 37-35 back-and-forth offensive battle this Grey Cup game. The good thing is, as I mentioned earlier, the weather seems to be decently warm, so it's not going to be a major factor in the outcome. If you look at what happened in the 2024 Grey Cup, the injury to Chad Kelly had a lot of people very high on the Blue Bombers. They were talking 10.5 point favorites, 13.5 point favorites. In our predictions, I remember saying that don't sleep on the Toronto Argonauts. They are the underdog in that game, but they can keep it close and put up a fight. And lo and behold, Nick Arbuckle was the MVP of the game. The Argonauts won it running away. Don't sleep on the Montreal Alouettes, even if Davis Alexander is hobbled. He can still do some things on the field to move the ball. McLeod Bethel Thompson has spent enough years in this league. He knows how to get the job done as well. I anticipate this being a very close game. I'm hard-pressed to pick a winner. I do think that the Alouettes will beat that 3.5 point spread. I'm not sure which way this one's going, though, and I'm excited to find out.
Montreal, I believe, will get inside the spread. Will they win the football game? We talk so much on this podcast. What do turnovers do to the outcome? If Davis Alexander is mobile and that hamstring is wrapped up properly, then yeah, this game is going to come right down to the wire. It's going to be maybe who has the football last. It's hard, but I really am scared of the Montreal Alouettes. I think that of the teams that were left, they were the team that were playing the best.
I agree, and I've been speaking about this for the last few weeks, that I thought BC and Montreal were red hot and could do a lot of damage in the playoffs. We almost saw the upset with the BC Lions in Saskatchewan last week. We saw the Montreal Alouettes on the road in Hamilton take that one down to the wire and get the winning points. This is, I believe, going to be a very close game, and as I said, it's going to be in that 24-21 range when all is said and done. I don't see a high-scoring affair. You never know. Sometimes when you've got these two really strong defenses, something weird happens and they both have an off night and we get a shootout. I just don't see that happening, but it should be a very entertaining and physical game.
The teams split their series, Saskatchewan winning in Montreal, Montreal winning in Saskatchewan. it's a saw off on so many different levels. The defenses are both great. The offenses are both very good. Quarterbacking is strong on both sides of the ball. Can Alexander play the full 60 minutes? Does Trevor Harris play the full 60 minutes? What if something happens to him? Look at the fall off there to Jake Maier. Would Jake Maier be strong enough to lead the Rough Riders to a Grey Cup win? I just hope it's a good game. I hope it's a lot of fun. It's sold out. It's been sold out for a while now. Guessing from what I've been reading, friend of the show, Derek Taylor, has posted out that they're going to be cheering for the Alouettes. So it is going to be a road game for the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. I think the Alouettes will cover the spread. Will they win the game? I'm going to stick with the Rough Riders on this one.
All right, we're both expecting a tight one.
Third Down Gamble uses the expert resources of the Canadian Football League and 3 Down Nation. For up-to-date, insightful statistics and analysis, please visit cfl.ca and 3downnation.com. The CFL on CBC theme music is used with written permission from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Thank you for listening to our show. Third Down Gamble is hosted on Podbean. Follow us on Twitter, where our handle is @ThirdDownGamble. Join us again next time. The Third Down Gamble podcast. Audio worth watching.